Welcome to The Deep Dive, the show where we really get into your sources, pull out those key insights, maybe those aha moments that help you feel, really clued in.
Exactly.
Today, we're jumping into something quite fascinating. We're going to explore the philosophical underpinnings, sometimes quite surprising, of a very modern political movement.
Hmm.
And then, in a twist, we're bringing in a 14th century polymath. A figure whose ancient wisdom might just give us a totally fresh angle on some current ideas.
Yeah, and the sources we're drawing on today are incredibly broad. They really trace this sort of intellectual line from ancient philosophers right up to, well, today's thinkers.
Okay.
And the goal isn't just to spot what ideas are there, but more about how they echo, how they get, reinterpreted, maybe even deliberately used across time, especially thinking about economics and politics.
Okay, so let's start to unpack this then, kicking things off by looking at how this modern political movement connects back, sometimes in really unexpected ways, to a long line of philosophy. We're talking themes like, nationalism, economic protectionism, traditionalism, and this real skepticism of centralized power.
Yeah, those are key.
And what's interesting, as the analysis points out, is it's not always direct inheritance, is it? It's more like echoes or intersections or maybe just a philosophical framework that gets borrowed and reshaped.
That's a really important point. The sources stress that these links are often strategic appropriations.
Yeah.
Or maybe parallels that observers notice.
Yeah.
It's less about a clear, unbroken chain of thought,
Right.
and more about how these older ideas are sort of repackaged, recontextualized for today's arguments.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What would Plato or Aristotle make of all this now? So let's dig into some of these ancient thinkers the research highlights. First, maybe the Greek foundations.
Yeah.
It's pretty striking how Plato's worries, centuries old, about democracy being fragile, his fears about moral decline, and this desire for strong leadership, they don't feel just like history, do they? The analysis suggests they're almost like blueprints being used again to critique liberal institutions and argue for powerful leaders.
Absolutely. And right alongside him, you've got Aristotle. His ideas on civic virtue, this concept of a natural hierarchy, the value of tradition, you see clear lines drawn to modern defenses of, well, traditional values and social order.
That idea that good governance needs good citizens, not just good laws.
Exactly. And it wasn't just the Greeks thinking about this. If you look at Roman resilience, someone like Cicero,
Okay.
with his Roman patriotism, that intense civic pride and being really against corruption, when you hear things like America first, the sources suggest it kind of echoes that Roman exceptionalism, putting your own nation first.
That's a strong parallel. And it's not just Western thought either, right? The materials bring in global wisdom, too.
That's right.
Like Confucius, emphasizing social harmony through, hierarchy and moral leadership.
Yeah.
That links pretty clearly to a modern focus on respecting authority, keeping cultural continuity.
It shows these ideas about order and virtue are pretty universal, really.
Yeah.
And then you also have someone like Thomas Aquinas, his Christian natural law, this idea of a divine order in politics that connects quite directly to religious nationalism, a kind of moral absolutism, maybe.
Rejecting relativism.
Right. And you can't forget Machiavelli, the ultimate pragmatist, wasn't he?
Definitely.
His focus on power politics, the need for a strong executive, seeing the world as it is, well, that parallels the kind of combative leadership and anti-establishment tactics we see sometimes.
It's amazing how these old frameworks just keep getting recontextualized.
It really is.
Okay, this is where, for me, it gets really interesting. Moving into the modern philosophers and thinkers, the connections seem even clearer, maybe more direct sometimes, like Ayn Rand. What did the sources say there?
Well, Rand is a very clear example. Her objectivism, that fierce anti-collectivism, the research draws a pretty straight line to that makers versus takers idea.
Right.
And the push for deregulation. It's all about individual achievement, seeing government as getting in the way.
And then there's Carl Schmitt. He's a bit more controversial, maybe.
Definitely. His ideas about sovereignty, like who really decides in a crisis, and that stark friend versus enemy distinction.
Yeah, that's a powerful frame.
It really is. And it resonates strongly with populist approaches that define politics as this fundamental conflict, identifying us versus them.
And Samuel Huntington, Clash of Civilizations. That seems pretty direct, too.
Oh, absolutely. It connects straight into anti-globalism and, well, a lot of the skepticism about immigration that's out there, this idea of deep, maybe unbridgeable cultural divides.
And Leo Strauss. with his critique of relativism.
Yeah, Strauss's elitism, his critique of moral relativism.
Yeah.
You see parallels, appeals to timeless truths, rejecting progressive norms, that kind of thing.
And the research also points to Pat Buchanan as a more direct precursor.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Buchanan's paleoconservatism, his protectionism, anti-interventionism, the analysis sees him as laying some of the groundwork. Ideologically speaking, his ideas sort of foreshadowed themes that became much bigger later on. And then, of course, Donald Trump is presented in the sources as this key populist figure, embodying that charismatic leadership, the strong anti-establishment message that pulls on many of these older threats.
So it's like a buffet of ideas almost.
Exactly. It shows how a movement can be quite flexible ideologically, drawing selectively from all these different traditions to, back up its arguments and policies.
So if we step back, what are the big shared themes across time that emerge from all this? The sources seem to highlight a few key ones, like this idea of national decline and restoration.
Oh, definitely. That's a huge one. You see it from Plato worrying about Athens, right through Huntington, and into the modern framing of, history as a fall from greatness that needs fixing, a return to something lost.
And distrust of elites. That seems timeless, too.
Absolutely. From Cicero railing against the Roman elite to Ayn Rand's contempt for bureaucrats. It's a very long tradition of anti-establishment feeling.
And protectionism and sovereignty. Thinking about the economy.
Yeah, economic nationalism. The desire for self-sufficiency, you see hints of it in Rome, certainly with Buchanan, and right up to modern arguments about trade, tariffs, bringing jobs back home.
Okay. And the last big one.
Moral absolutism. This rejection of relativism, insisting on fixed moral codes, timeless truths. It connects Aquinas, Strauss, and it's very prominent today.
So it all comes down to, what do the analysis call it? Narrative engineering.
Yes, the term used, yeah. How these abstract philosophical ideas get translated into these really potent, emotionally charged slogans and narratives that connect with people.
Okay, we've just traced how a modern political movement seems to draw on this huge range of philosophies, ancient and modern. Now, for that twist I mentioned, let's leap back to the 14th century, to Ibn Khaldun.
A truly remarkable figure.
An Arab polymath. His major work, the Muqaddimah, many see it as laying the groundwork for sociology, economics, history, way ahead of his time.
Absolutely. His approach to economics was, well, revolutionary for the 14th century. It was multidisciplinary, based on observation, dynamic.
Not just abstract theory.
Not at all. He saw economics as tied up with everything: politics, religion, culture, social structure. He looked at history to understand economic systems, how they evolved. It was a huge intellectual leap.
So let's get into some of his core concepts. First, this labor theory of value. The sources quote him, "Labor is the source of value. It is necessary for all earnings and capital accumulation."
Yeah, basically saying human effort is what makes things valuable. It's not just the raw materials. He really anticipated thinkers like Adam Smith or Marx by centuries on that point. It's the work that matters.
And his ideas on division of labor and urban prosperity, he saw that connection really clearly too, didn't he?
He did. He wrote, "A large civilization yields large profits because of the large amount of labor." He understood that specialization, especially in cities, drives prosperity. More people doing specialized jobs leads to more wealth, more complex societies.
Okay, and this next one, taxation and state decline. This sounds almost eerily modern.
It really does. His famous observation: at the beginning of a dynasty, taxation yields a large revenue from small assessments. At the end, it yields a small revenue from large assessments.
Wow.
He argued for low taxes to keep people productive. He warned against the state getting too big, too bureaucratic. It's incredibly similar to the Laffer curve idea we talk about today, that cutting taxes can sometimes increase revenue, centuries ahead of its time.
Amazing. And finally, free market and trade. He was basically an early advocate.
Very much so. He favored free economic activity, opposed the state getting directly involved in business. Why? He thought bureaucrats just didn't have the right incentives, that they'd mess up the market.
Right.
He really stressed secure property rights, stable money, things essential for a healthy economy.
So what's really fascinating, as the analysis points out, is how he tied all this economic thinking into his bigger theory about history, the rise and fall of civilizations.
Exactly. It was all connected for him. He had this core concept, asabiya. It's a bit hard to translate perfectly.
Group solidarity, social cohesion.
Something like that. A shared purpose, collective will, group feeling. He argued that strong asabiya is what allows a group to rise up, build a state, expand.
But then
But then, success brings luxury, Bureaucracy grows. Taxes go up to pay for it all. That initial drive, the Asabiya, weakens. And he explicitly linked this decline to economics. Quote, "The growth of absolute power in the state is the cause of the decline of economic prosperity."
So too much state power, too much luxury, it kills the economic engine and the social spirit.
That was his argument. Excessive taxes, military spending, state meddling, they lead to collapse. It's this profound link between social energy, the economy, and political cycles.
And just briefly on his life, born in Tunis, 1332, roots in Arabia, later moved to Cairo, became a respected judge, professor,
Larger rulers, yeah.
and even met the conqueror Tamerlane. Quite a life. Died in Cairo, 1406, leaving this incredible intellectual legacy. Okay, so we've covered a lot. Modern political thought pulling from all these philosophers, then the deep insights of Ibn Khaldun from the 14th century. Now let's connect the dots in this unexpected intersection.
Right.
How have Khaldun's ideas, coming from such a different time and place, been, as the sources say, retroactively aligned with some modern beliefs, especially conservative ones?
Yeah, and again, it's crucial to understand this isn't about Khaldun directly influencing modern conservatives in a historical sense. It's more about finding resonance.
Parallels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thinkers have looked back at his work and found these powerful parallels that seem to support or echo contemporary arguments. It's a fascinating case of, well, finding intellectual allies across centuries.
So let's look at those philosophical parallels, the materials detail. First, taxation and economic incentives. Khaldun arguing low taxes spur growth.
It maps almost perfectly onto modern supply-side economics, doesn't it? The argument for tax cuts to boost the economy. It's the same core logic. They'll let people keep more, they'll produce more.
And his distrust of bureaucracy.
Again, a very strong echo. His warnings about state interference, favoring private enterprise. It aligns perfectly with rhetoric about, the Dop state. Calls for deregulation, freeing up business.
His line about rulers getting into commerce leading to decay.
Sounds very much like a modern critique of government overreach, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay. And his theory about civilizational cycles and moral decay. Empires declining due to luxury, loss of vigor.
Well, you can see how that resonates with narratives like Make America Great Again.
Yeah.
That idea of returning to a perceived golden age, implying that, softness or moral decline has caused current problems. Khaldun's luxury leads to softness. Softness leads to weakness.
Weakness invites conquest. Yeah, that's a powerful quote.
It is. And finally, that concept of Asabiya group solidarity.
Right, the social cohesion.
Khaldun saw it as vital for state power and success. And that aligns very neatly with a modern emphasis on national unity, patriotism, cultural identity, sometimes in opposition to globalism or multiculturalism.
So this really raises that question. How do these ideas get rediscovered and used?
Well, the research points to a specific moment. Ronald Reagan. He actually quoted Ibn Khaldun to support his tax cuts.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, arguing Khaldun proved lower taxes boost revenue. And that specific connection apparently helped Khaldun's work get more attention among American conservatives.
So it sort of provided this historical, intellectual backing for policies.
Exactly. Helped lay some groundwork. It's just a striking example of how these diverse, sometimes ancient philosophical threads can be woven into contemporary arguments, giving them a sense of historical depth and legitimacy.
What a journey. From ancient Greece through modern thinkers, exploring the philosophical background of a political movement, then this amazing detour to the 14th century with Ibn Khaldun.
Yeah.
Only to find these really striking connections back to our own time.
It really underscores, I think, how valuable knowledge is when we don't just know it, but understand it, see the connections, maybe apply it, and how critical thinking is just essential to sort through all this complex information.
Definitely.
Ideas really do echo, don't they? They get reinterpreted, reused across centuries. They give us different ways to look at our world, the stories we tell about it.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. How do historical ideas and philosophies get picked up, sometimes very selectively, and reshaped to fit today's narratives? What does that reveal about the enduring power of ideas, maybe? Or perhaps our need to find historical roots for what we believe now? What stands out to you about how these different ways of thinking connect or maybe clash in the world today?
Good question to ponder.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.